Stephen Moir is the CEO of the Motor Trades Association here in WA. Morning, Stephen.
Good morning, Gareth.
What is the entry price for an electric vehicle at the moment?
So we have 28 EV models available in Australia. Only 8 of those are priced under $65,000. I think the entry point is the MG ZS. But the concerning point is, and your previous caller made a good point, the average price that a consumer pays for a car, a new car in Australia, is $42,000. So you can see we've got a problem immediately.
Right.
And, you know, one of the things that government policy seems to miss out on is, and if we talk about, for instance, subsidising people to buy electric cars, if you do that, you're really only subsidising those who can already afford an electric car. Those people who aren't fortunate enough to have 100,000 plus incomes will never get there. And we've got to make sure that everybody can access this technology.
Okay. Is there such thing as a second-hand electric vehicle market? So, you know, if I'm buying a 10-year-old Holden Commodore as my first car, can I buy a 10-year-old, Prius? Will it still work? Not Prius, Tesla. Will it still work?
So great caution needs to be exercised here. Yes, there is an emerging second-hand market. However, people need to realise that batteries start to deplete from the first day you start using them. So you may very well start off with a car that can do 300 kilometres on a charge. And we've just recently had one second-hand car that was down to 60 kilometres a charge. Now, the cost of replacing batteries is substantial, can be anywhere between $15,000 to $25,000. So people need to consider that fact.
Now, there's a bit of analysis around today suggesting that Australia will become a dumping ground for polluting vehicles from global auto manufacturers. Do you believe that that's going to be the case, Stephen, and why would that be?
I don't think we'll be a dumping ground for combustion engine cars. I think we'll just get second-rate choice when it comes to electric.
Why?
Now, the reason for that is that there's 50 modern economies, and the EU is the best one of this, where they actually have carbon emission targets. And those targets are set pretty strictly, where it's basically 95 grams of CO2 per kilometre, and anything over that gets a fine of $150. So Volkswagen, for instance, who are the largest producer of electric cars in Europe, are pouring electric product into the European market to offset their combustion models. And it works really well. That's why in Europe right now you've got 230 different model cars available to people, and there's 32 models that are between 30 and 60,000 Australian dollars. So we're never going to get there if the federal government doesn't make a bold decision to say, you know what, we're going to put on some mandatory carbon taxes for manufacturers, and that will encourage them to bring these cars into the Australian market. Remembering, Gareth, we are only 1% of the international market, so we're hardly in a position to try and influence it without any meaningful target.
Okay, you said carbon taxes. I mean, Scott Morrison's never going to do that, is he? I mean, it would completely undermine his whole political positioning.
He's going to have to look at it for cars. Volkswagen have said that if the Australian government introduced mandatory carbon targets, they would import cars into Australia. There's no need for them to bring those cars into Australia right now because they can sell them anywhere else in the world where they're having to offset their combustion engines.
Okay. Last question before I let you go, Stephen. A lot of listeners yesterday raised the issue, and I thought it was a good point. Where exactly is the electricity coming from to power these electric vehicles? If we're burning coal and gas, then are we actually doing anything positive about the environment?
Well, see, unfortunately, cars have become a political tool. If you want to be seen to be doing something about the environment, let's pick on cars. Cars emit about 11% of total emissions. By comparison, I think the power grid emits something like 38% of emissions in Australia. It is a ridiculous notion to talk about really pushing forward with EVs whilst we're still relying on 21 coal-powered power stations across the country.
Good on you, Stephen. Thank you very much.
Good on you. Thanks, mate.
Stephen Moir, CEO, Motor Trades Association, a font of knowledge about the automotive industry. It's always good to get his perspective.